Welcome to What is Health? I haven't actually warned David that I was just going to press record and we just start. So, we're going to do, we're going to talk and...
What are we going to do?
Well, I don't know. I'll put a bit of context here. David will introduce himself in a second, but we work together. And why I've asked David is probably not what this will actually turn into, but when we are in the office, I would say we have some humorous conversations. We seem to sort of be on the same wavelength, and I thought it's a nice angle on health to talk about, but mostly I just wanted to talk rambling nonsense this is very self-indulgent.
Well, you've kind of you've set me up to fail with saying it's going to be humorous, because it's going to be not funny at all now, I'm sure.
What if it just gets really, really dark?
It's quite possible. Yeah.
I'll ask you a question. Usually I start off with people sort of what was the young version of David like? And
oh God.
But before as well, when I turn the recording thing on, before I do that, there's always a preamble.
All right.
And we were talking about interesting tans. So surf tan.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying that Jason warned me that I may appear sort of slightly more tan when this is shown. And again, I would just stress that I thought this was just a podcast, and I wasn't expecting to be seen. So, I haven't really made much of an effort.
I
was just saying that when I used to surf a lot, when I lived down on the coast in Kent, I used to surf very frequently, and I used to have a tan, but it only came to the sort of top of my wetsuit, so I looked ridiculous. And my students on the program that I used to work at all used to really they used to look at me sort of, what's that tan? It was as if I was wearing a Steve Jobs style turtleneck, but in the sun, so, and again, my hands were tanned in the summer, not in the winter. You wear thick gloves, but so I just kind of had this really odd look, so very tan. And again, because I was surfing in the winter more often than I was in the summer with the winter sun, I had an all year round sort of tan, but this white, almost like a dog collar sort of thing. But anyway.
And you had lots of vitamin D. In your face.
That'd be just in my face.
I'm not great on physiology, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
But I also used to have loads of outer ear infections because of the seawater in my ears as well. So swings and roundabouts. What's given with one hand is taken with the other. So I had a good time. But I was constantly sort of doing this.
Okay, right.
Random.
So there you go. That sets the tone. Okay. So we're here to talk about health, but what I seem to find is that I start in a sort of place, so I tend to ask people what was the young version of you like, and then go from there. The idea is that probably a lot of what we are in our older form is rooted in our formative years, which kind of makes sense. I believe there's some research that sort of says that. Okay. So what is young, if I was talking to young David, who would I be talking to?
Oh no.
This is part of the reason I asked you as well, because I felt like we probably had some common ground, so I'll be interested to see.
I hope not, for your sake. I was a horrible child. I mean, maybe that won't surprise anyone.
Same here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Same page.
Yeah, no, I was always, as a young child, I was quite high maintenance, and my mum sort of still, she at Christmas and whenever she sort of draws out stories of the terrible things that I did as a child, and I can't.
So you relive them.
Yeah, and my sister as well. In fact, my eldest son is very well behaved, and my parents and my sister were outraged with this, because they thought there's no sort of cosmic justice. if anyone deserved a really sort of naughty high maintenance child, it was me, and by some sort of fluke I got this very sort of biddable child who was doing so. But I mean, I wasn't. I think I sort of turned my mum grey from an early age. She tells I can't. This is very confessional, but so she, one of the stories she trots out about me was she was sort of standing in the street chatting to a friend, and I was on reins as a toddler, and she's chatting away to her mates, and her friend suddenly screams, and my mum's like, what's going on, and the friend's sort of pointing down, and I'm their age, I don't know, 2 with when I picked up lots of cigarette butts and I just had them all in my mouth and I was sort of smiling up and my mum was, oh, just David. But that was the sort of thing that I used to get up to, and there's another, apparently I was, from a sort of worrisome high maintenance point of view, we lived in a sort of small house in the country for a while, and they lost me in the house for about half an hour. To cut a long story short, apparently I'd climbed up the chimney and I was in the sort of flue and just sort of sitting up there, so
you're in the chimney.
Yeah. So there's worse, but I'm not gonna. We'll save that for another time.
We were trying to work out how long we would keep our job for.
Yeah.
Podcast, and we got to like 5 minutes. I think we're all right so far.
I don't know whether these are kind of retrospective crimes. So against my family. So it's kind of domestic abuse, I suppose. Really. Not that makes it sound any better. I don't know.
No.
But so in answer to your question, I was I was sort of grubby, sort of naughty, not particularly, I don't know, well behaved child.
I think that idea of, I don't know, I think there's probably a serious theme in there as well of how much are we responsible for what we did when we were younger. This is me trying to sort of like excuse myself. But one thing I don't like about sort of modern society is this: they've just on X hidden the likes, so people can no longer see what you've liked.
Right.
And the reason theoretically is that people were liking things, and then 10 years later people were printing off a backlog of all the things that they'd like, and the inference is that you therefore have this opinion, and that it's remained static for 20 odd years or 10 years. And I just think, like, I'm so glad I don't have. We grew up in an age where photographs were taken on film, all of that stuff.
Well, Polaroid was like magic, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So like, I'm very grateful there isn't that kind of record of me, and it sort of makes me think about that level of censorship that perhaps we have now, and how that maybe changes our behaviour.
Yeah, no, and ironically, my past was, forgotten until I've come on this, and you've dragged it all
That's
up
the
again.
intention.
So,
Yeah. It's a confessional that I'm hoping, and here is your printout.
Yeah.
Because it did.
I'll send this to my mum. She'll be like, yeah. That's not the worst of it. So she'll be commenting,
Actually, is your mum? Maybe I'll get your mum on there.
Yeah, no, she's in Derbyshire now. So.
So we've had sort of like you were a quirky tinker of a child, and
rascal.
Yeah. At what point? Because we are nurses. For some context, I probably should have started off with that. We worked together. Yeah. David is a nurse, and sort of how did that? Were you a nurse from sort of 18? No. How did you get into nursing? Talk about your sort of like.
Well, since we're going right back to family, in this therapy. Yeah. So my mum was a nurse. She was a dialysis nurse, a renal nurse, doing CAPD, continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis. So as a young child, I was sort of very aware of that. I used to go to the hospital, quite a lot because of shift work, and she'd
just leave you on the ward.
Well, yeah. No, she would. She'd leave me in. In those days, there were waiting rooms, and patient, like, I don't know what you call it really, not a TV room. This was back in the sort of probably late 70s when she was leaving me there. So very different to how it is now. So I would just sort of be left there. And I sort of grew up around hospitals, but it was never my intention to become a nurse. She left nursing, went into social work, in actual fact. So anyway, but so I had quite bad asthma as a child as well. So again, I spent a lot of time at the hospital. So I think I grew up around a sort of health environment, and I was hospitalised a couple of times, which was great. I loved it.
Really? Yeah. I was about to ask, what was that like? What did you like about it?
Oh, so I had very bad asthma from a sort of, I don't know, I was diagnosed maybe 5, 6.
Right.
I think probably when I was about sort of 9, 10, 11 was when it was at its worst. So I'd have these exacerbations, and I'd end up sort of being rushed into the emergency department. And they usually, they'd sort me out, give me salbutamol nebs, and then I'd be sitting in clinic again, very different system to it was now, and then they'd send me off to the Royal Sea Bathing Hospital in Margate to convalesce, which again, I know it was great. The Royal Sea Bathing it's now been sold off by the NHS, and it's now luxury flats. But when I was there as a child, it's a sort of big Victorian sort of high ceilinged hospital with these big sort of glass sort of panels to let the sun in, and a nice outside area. So anyway, I was sent there to convalesce, and as soon as I got to the coast, my asthma just disappeared. So I was just, again, this awful rascally child running around, and they'd be like, why have you been admitted? But I was there for a couple of weeks at a time, and it was like a holiday. So my parents would sort of come, and they'd feel really sorry for me, and obviously I'd lay it on when they were there. And I had to have blood taken regularly, which I hated. I mean, I don't know anyone who likes it. So I'd moan about,
I faint.
Okay. I just dislike the feel of the.
I'll faint at some point.
Right, okay.
No, carry on. No, it'll be funny.
It's okay.
We'll get more views if I faint. We'll get more views.
Particularly if I just sort of stand there laughing. No, I
just say blood repeatedly, and at some point I will faint.
It's just the feel of that, the metal of the needle in the vein, and you just sort of like and it's not painful. It's just unpleasant. So anyway, they take my blood, and they give me nebs, and they do physiotherapy. They bash me in the chest, and again they had a separate unit for the physio with a swimming pool. It was, this was years ago. Again, the stuff people dream of now regarding sort of NHS resourcing, but don't want to get into the politics of the anyway. Backpedaling very, very quickly. So my parents would come along, and I'd sort of, lay it on. They took my blood, they bashed me in physiotherapy, and they buy me loads of stuff, and they take me into Margate to, and there'd be amusement arcades and the beach and ice cream. And so I look forward to going to hospital. But I mean, obviously when I was having an acute exacerbation of asthma, it was very unpleasant. But as a kid, you're fairly resilient, and you get over it, and you forget, and you move on. So
it's kind of interesting, though, isn't it? You sort of think about, my daughter's had a few sort of health issues in her younger years, and as a parent, you can't help but worry about that. But you kind of forget how. I think often people say kids are really resilient, and that's taking it, a bit too far, sort of saying, they can put up with anything. But at the same time, they are more resilient than perhaps I've appreciated, and and very similar in terms of your eldest child. You were saying, how did I get this functional? My daughter's the same. I sort of look around and think, how's that a product of my parenting? But I was taking her to universities actually this weekend, and I felt that instant sort of like, I want to sort of do everything, make everything better, and all of that kind of like. And I was very conscious of it, and then very conscious of, no, this is one of those points where she knows what she's doing. Yeah. It was really obvious she knew what she was doing, but I found that a bit of a struggle. So maybe I should have sent her on holiday to hospital more often. She didn't quite get the service that you got because she's younger. So
well, absolutely, it was a very, very different sort of health environment in those days. But I mean, I was, your daughter's obviously sort of 18, she's taken off to 17. This was when I was sort of 9 or 10, and again I think the older you get, even as a child, the more aware you become, and I was still pretty unaware. And again, I would stress I was in addition to being a rascally, annoying child, I was that's the best way I can put it. But I was also pretty dumb. So you like the way I assumed that you didn't think I was dumb there, when he's just thinking, so I don't think I had that awareness, which again is why I was so sort of resilient, because you're not really aware of what's going on.
Do you mean
at that age?
Dumb with book smart, sort of dumb at kind of reading the room, or
both? Okay. definitely both. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I had a similar sort of thing as well, because people, maybe you've had this experience, like my friends who've known me a long time, they wouldn't have pegged me as the person that ends up having a doctorate. Even 10 years ago or so, they really wouldn't. They find it a bit funny and a bit offensive as well, because they sort of tried really hard at school. And I've sort of noticed a lot of people that do get to this point, they they quite often are late starters, and it's because they have a sort of clunky start, I guess. I don't know, but I'd identify with that a lot. I was, very borderline whether I'd progress at all, sort of after 16 years from school. You wouldn't have pegged me at all.
No,
maybe you still wouldn't.
No.
That's the confused look on people's face. Okay, so.
I haven't really answered your question. I'm sorry, Jason.
No, that's what this is supposed to do. This is supposed to like ramble on, and I imagine people watch it just to see like the organised chaos, and who knows. Right, so you at some point you decide you want to be a nurse. You're going to tell me you did nursing like 4 years ago, and it's like I don't want to skip through like a massive part of your life, but
so anyway, in answer to your original question, which I've got off talking about the Royal Seabed Hospital, I didn't really plan on being a nurse. Originally, I went to university to study ancient history, like you do, and then it was after that probably in my mid-20s, I was 26, I'd sort of done my ancient history and I'd done something else. And I thought, maybe that is something that I'm interested in.
You look more like a history teacher than a nurse.
Well, I was again afterwards, bizarrely. So I know it's confusing. It confuses me. So I did. Well, I did my first degree and I did a master's as well in archaeology. So, but that's the normal path, isn't it, into nursing and health? Yeah. So
it's pretty standard. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
if there's any sixth formers watching.
Yeah, exactly.
History, archaeology, nursing.
Exactly. It's a cliche, I know, but that's the path that I followed. That well-worn path via I don't know, classical Athens, etc. But so I applied to do nursing and decided that actually this is what I was going to commit to. So I did a 26 and I qualified with 29, whatever I happened to be. So and that's So I was a late starter to nursing, but it was very much influenced, I think, by my mum. My mum telling me not to do it originally, and then when I chatted to her again, sort of saying, why not? And I went from qualifying. I went into emergency medicine, which I loved, and again was very dynamic. And sort of lots of learning opportunities. I think that's what I liked, was the fact that there was, lots to learn, and that's the wonderful thing about nursing, medicine, health, that there's always something else to learn. Just the postscript though, I left nursing, went back to teaching history, and then came back into nurse education.
Yeah,
so
gap year.
So
history gap year.
I need to kind of commit. So hopefully now I'm not going to change career again. I'll stick with this.
Did you always stay in nurses then in sort of like the emergency sort of environment, or did you move around?
Yeah, so I did, but for sort of reasons I won't bring up in this. No, it's not that there's anything controversial. It's just not.
Everyone wants to know this bit.
No,
it's all right.
I'm going to say no on just because it has sort of implications for other people, but nothing bad. I would suggest, or I would say. I didn't stay in emergency medicine. I went and did community for a little bit, and I did respiratory. I worked in a respiratory team, which again, because I had asthma, that was quite a natural sort of progression, really, and I enjoyed that. It was mainly COPD and sort of chronic respiratory problems, and a bit of sort of cancer and mesothelioma down in Kent. Weirdly, there's a lot of sort of mining communities down. You don't really think of Kent as mining, but Betts Hanger sort of way is between Canterbury and Dover.
Really?
Yeah, it used to be some pits. They all got shut under Thatcher.
You didn't do a little stint there, history, archaeology?
No. It's just dealing with people with terrible lung problems because of all the coal dust they know. But and then I went back into emergency medicine because it sort of suited my circumstances at the time. And then I specialised in minor injuries. That's what I ended up doing. I was a nurse practitioner in a nurse-led minor injuries unit, and that's where I stayed until I went and taught history again in secondary school.
Okay, like you had So you started off with history, and then you had 2 interims teaching history.
Yeah, but I studied ancient history and then taught modern history, which was ironic because I didn't know any modern history. So my studies at university ended at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, and then they wanted me to start again in 1066, and I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah. So I was kind of a week ahead of the kids, really, in everything that I did history-wise. I also taught humanities, which I knew nothing about. Really, I was winging that. It surprised you to know. I mean, if anyone's seen me teach at university, you think, yeah, it kind of figures. But I also taught health and social care at A level, which again was probably why they employed me, because they thought, hang on, this guy can teach history, even though I couldn't, but they didn't know that, modern history. But he can also teach health and social care, so we get 2 for 1. So that's why I got a job in teaching, really.
There's there's sort of a teaching theme here, isn't there? And what do you think draws you to, or drew you to that kind of like teaching, educationally type role? Because here you are. I don't think it's an accident. It's too consistent to be an accident.
Well, it's naivety, I think. I'd say, I mean, when you know, with sort of education and teaching, it always looks really easy until you have to do it, doesn't it? So you sort of think, oh yeah, I can do that. I can stand in front of a class and, you know, talk. But then when you have to do it, it's actually quite tricky. Particularly, it's not easier in secondary education, but it is different with the whole classroom management sort of thing. So that was kind of a rude awakening for me to think, actually, this is pretty difficult. Teaching in higher education has its challenges. They're just different. Yeah, I mean, I love teaching. I really enjoyed that interaction that you get with the class, and you know, there's a kind of balance between, you know, you giving and delivering information and what you get back. And I think that really matters. And again, this isn't a podcast on education per se. Oh, okay. But it's different now in with the whole kind of remote teaching, which I do a lot. That's more challenging, getting something back. Still enjoy it, but it's very different in environment. But face-to-face classroom teaching is when it goes well, and you know when it's gone well, it is a joy. It's exhausting because it's like an act, I was thinking. I don't know about you, it is for me. You know, it's like, and
it's getting less of an act for me.
Oh, really?
It used to be. I used to be able to sort of hand on heart say, this is the professional teachy version of Jason.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, I've noticed over the last sort of year or so that they're merging.
Okay.
And I've found that quite interesting.
Yeah.
And you say that this isn't education, and you were kind of saying it's not really health, but for me it is, because you're describing those 2 sides of it. You're describing that there's a part of sort of transferring knowledge or facilitating that way, but there's also a bit that kind of goes back to, and that's what I find is I've learned so much about myself that it might seem like it's education, but I don't know, it probably sounds quite self-indulgent, but I think without that, you're not a good educator.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that kind of moment where you look in the mirror and you go, oh, that's a bit wrong, or I need to just readjust.
Yeah, I have to be careful. I absolutely agree. I find I was teaching last week, which was lovely, on the respiratory system, funnily enough, lungs again. And you know, quite often you sort of led off on an anecdote or something that's kind of relevant, but then it sort of, you know, goes into slightly irrelevant. But I often say to the class, I'm sorry, I'm using this as therapy for myself. You know, particularly when I'm sort of joking about my family or something that's happened to me, and you know, that's. It's not self-indulgent, because it's part of the organic sort of experience, as you say, of teaching what you get back and sort of riffing off the room, and you know, and you can tell when it's appropriate and when you probably actually rein it back in a bit. But no, I certainly I think that the teaching has influenced the person I am now. I still, for me, feel it's a little bit of an act, probably, but I absolutely take the point about, you know, the 2 sort of merging, but
I think it probably is. I mean, it's really clear here that if we didn't have this screen in front of us, this conversation would, you know, most likely sort of go into slightly different pockets of, you know, what we're discussing. I think that's just normal, isn't it? But like, especially, But
probably would have dropped a swear word by now.
yeah. But I suppose there's something there. I suppose if I was in the class, I like that authenticity.
Yeah.
Maybe not everyone does. Maybe at some point, message me and go, yeah, can you drop that kind of like? Can you you said they're merging. Could you pull them apart a little bit because it's getting weird.
Yeah.
But I suppose you sometimes teach or facilitate, or whatever you want to call it, in a way that you feel would work for you, because that's the barometer you have, and you have that barometer for sort of people's feedback as well. But yeah, it is linked to my health. I'm going to make a massive, there's no segue here by the way, but it was a thought I had, and before I forget it, the surfing, is that something that was, is that anything to do with, like, you noticed it was respiratory? Because you were saying something about living in Margate near the sea, and like your lung function got better. Was that a conscious effort, or was it just you like surfing because you were by the sea? Yeah, so I mean, we moved down. I lived in Kent for a long. I was born in Kent and moved away, and then moved back again. But we lived in Broadstairs, which is between. Margate and Ramsgate. It's called the whole area is called Thanet. But we moved down there because for my youngest son's school, in actual fact. So he got a place at a school that suited him, and so we made the move down there because he was having a terribly long commute. I sort of dabbled with surfing before that when I lived in Canterbury, but I had to sort of drive down to the coast. It's about sort of 45 minutes, and by the time you've got down there and unpack your equipment and changed again, it becomes sort of like a 4-hour round trip. So when we moved to Broadstairs, I really took the opportunity to sort of surf and to paddleboard and stand up paddleboard surf as well. Again, because I was surfing, and I broke my wrist twice. Surfing?
No. So playing football. I was playing football with some guys. I was one of the older ones, and I should have stopped. But I thought, no, I'll be fine. I can still hack it. I did it again for the exercise more than I'm terrible at football. But I broke my wrist. I was playing in goal, and I didn't realise I'd broken my wrist. My wife said to me, "You've broken your wrist. You need to go to hospital." And I was like, "No, I'm fine." I was going down for an interview, I think, the following day for a job that I then went on to do. So I was like, no. So I drove from Canterbury to Medway with this broken wrist. And my wife kept saying, "You need to go to hospital." And I said, this is my gift to my wife. I said, no, love, it's fine. I think I'd know. I worked in minor injuries for a long time. I've seen a lot of broken wrists. I'd know if I'd broken my wrist. Anyway, she was completely right and I was wrong. And from that, so now she has this wonderful thing. Every time I say anything confidently, she just says, well, you were confident about your wrist, weren't you? And you're completely wrong about that.
Such a win, yeah.
It is for her, because she can just bring it up in almost any, circumstance, and it always applies and it always trumps anything I'm going to. And she's not wrong. I would say, I should have listened to Louise. I should have listened to you, because I went on to develop a non-union and avascular necrosis of my scaphoid. And I needed a big operation. I have a bit of metal. Not the same happened to you?
No, I'm just really good with anatomy. For some weird, obscure reason, I don't know. No, I didn't.
But so again, I've gone off on a tangent. But that's why I stopped surfing, started paddleboarding, because I couldn't pop up anymore on the surfboard. Anyway, it's a long and needless explanation to something really quite banal. But I think I did the surfing and the paddleboarding was more for mental health, I'd say, than physical health. Because as I got older, my lungs just improved, as they often do with asthma. Very, very bad in childhood. You don't grow out of it entirely, but it certainly improves as your lung function improves. Although now, of course, my lung function is declining as I get older. But anyway, but surfing was more mental sort of health, just a physical well-being sort of thing.
I've got some middle-aged man questions in a minute. Yeah. But when you say for mental health, what is it about that sort of act? Is it the sea? Is it just the kind of I'm doing something purposeful? Yeah. Physical exercise? Is it all those things?
Yeah, physically it is demanding, and again, as I got older, I was very much aware that I was getting older, and I couldn't go out for for any more than 2 hours in the end because I'd feel like I'd been beaten up. I mean, literally feel like I'd been beaten because when you're paddling out against waves, it's pretty brutal. And I'd come back and just sort of collapse on the sofa, and I'm sure I had terrible electrolyte imbalance because I'd overdone it. But you know, when it wasn't,
that would be my primary concern.
You know,
I'm really tired. Oh, what about my electrolytes?
I'm kidding, but so physically it was, you know, it was definitely worthwhile. But really, as you say, it was being on the sea, you know, and often I'd be on my own in the. There's usually some other guys that come out if the waves were good, so you'd meet people out there, you chat, you know, just kind of banter, you know, guys and women, of course. There are lots of good female surfers and paddleboarders. But you know, I'd go out early usually or late, just because again it's quite touristy place. But if you went out, you know, the crack of dawn or in the evening, no one was around. So the sun's coming up, sun's going down. You know, you see the seals, they pop up, catch waves. It's really so. And again, it was. I'm not a great one for sort of mindfulness. I'm kind of struggled a little bit with that concept. You know,
what's your image of mindfulness? So I think sometimes people get this wrong.
Well, probably. So for me, it was just sort of being involved in an activity which happened to be paddleboarding that just meant that excluded everything else. That was kind of. I don't really get, you know, people these mindfulness podcasts when they talk about, I don't know, visualizing stuff. It's never worked for me. And I'm no expert. Unfortunately, because I worked.
Because you just described it. I think what you're describing is a kind of corporate version of acceptance and mindfulness and being in the moment, whereas most people could appreciate the version that you described, which is just a normal human sort of intuitive thing to do when you want to sort of distract yourself from some sort of emotional, uncomfortable state.
Yeah.
I think people do that all the time.
Yeah, no, I just could switch off from everything that's going on at work, everything else, just be involved in enjoy. And it was very much in just being in the moment. And catching a wave is very much like that. You know, it's always different. You know, and once it's gone, it's gone. You can never replicate it. And sometimes you'll succeed, and other times you'll fail. More often than not, I failed. And you know, but it was the process that was the joy, if you like, of doing it. And now I've moved inland. I don't do it very often. And I miss it. No. So I do miss that activity. It was a sort of big part of my life when I lived down there, and the job that I had was quite stressful. So I definitely would like look forward to just going out, forgetting about it, doing something for a couple of hours, being out in the sunshine, getting this really embarrassing tan, and then coming home exhausted and thinking, oh, I should have come in half an hour ago. I shouldn't have stayed out, but you know.
Well, you did it for a reason, I guess. But the paddleboard, I paddleboard as well, and I think one of the things I sort of, this is related, but it's a slightly different thing. I started doing, it was at my local community centre. I started doing life drawing. It must have been about 8 years ago, and like I'm not an artist. And I found the whole idea of it quite uncomfortable. But I just saw it and I thought, I'm going to push myself to do it. And I was rubbish. I nearly swore for the first time there. But like, I was not very...
We've done pretty well,
I think. Yeah, I was not a talented artist. But what I noticed when I came out was that there were so many areas of my life that I was sort of striving for sort of progression and all of these sorts of things, and to hold myself to a really high standard, that I actually quite liked being a bit rubbish. You know, that was, and then someone out of the kindness of their heart thought, he's a bit rubbish, I'll teach him. And at that point, I lost interest in it because it was my one sort of outlet. And the link is here is that paddleboarding was a bit like that for me. I've got 2 paddleboards. One's a race board because that's the side of me that wants to sort of, you know, maybe I'll get into it, maybe I'll become like the best and a world champion. And then another one's just for kind of standing on and looking at ducks. And I always take the one that's standing and looking on ducks, and I don't care if I look a bit rubbish. I mean, I can do it all on the same side now. But anyway, but like I just like something in my life where I can just like not necessarily have to take it to that kind of extreme and get better. It just stays still. I remember it's funny enough about failing. I remember I was out once, and again, it's always different, and it was a warm day, and it started to hail.
And the hail came down. You're wearing a wetsuit, so you're fine. Got a hat on and everything, so it didn't hurt. But the cold hail in the sea meant that it steamed up, and it was like being on a sort of mountain almost. You've got the waves, and you can only see about 5 feet. I don't know, a couple of meters. Getting my metric and imperial mixed up there, but a couple.
That's important.
Yeah,
we will be judged on that.
We were tested at the end. Yeah.
I was enjoying the podcast, but then he got his metric and imperial, and I had to switch off.
Well, we did switch to metric in 1971, so I've had long enough to. Because sad. But
sorry, I've interrupted.
No. You've called me out for my tedious pedantry. So anyway, it was the hail's coming down. There's steam coming off the waves. It was really quite sort of magical, for want of a better word. And a wave came, and I remember thinking, "This is amazing. I've never been out like this before. This wave's going to come. It's like being surfing in the clouds. I'm going to catch this wave, and it's going to be the best wave I've ever. It's going to be a real." And I just blew it. Absolutely choked. Fell off in this. The hail stopped. The sea cleared, and I was just sort of bobbing up and thinking, that was my one chance. That'll never happen again. But I was like, no, that's cool. It didn't happen. So what?
Yeah.
So,
I kind of joke about these moments, because it's kind of like an Instagram moment, isn't it? You can imagine someone catches it on camera, and you go viral, all of that stuff. And I always joke when I sort of out running, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a photo that I'm going to have in my scrapbook when I'm in my care home and I'm like 95 years old and I'm showing people that, this was young Jason, I'm really proud of it. But like you say, in that moment, that's the only thing that really matters, is what's happening there. I think I've got something like 3,000 photos in my phone, and I was speaking to a friend's daughter about this, and I was just like, I don't look at them. They're not sort of like part of my... I take the photo, and so I've tried to sort of stop doing that. So the bit that I've bookmarked...
Sorry, yeah.
And no, it's fine. It's brilliant. Is that you said... that was it. You were sort of saying, now I'm getting old. And I think part of my motive for this was that we're of a similar age.
Yeah, I'm older. Obviously.
Yeah, well, it's just... But thanks for acknowledging that. But more recently, and it is just more recently, I've started to think about the kind of I've noticed stuff about my physical health, and I'm not sort of asking for your medical history here, but you sort of said I had to stop that because there was this kind of and football as well.
Yeah.
You were sort of you were starting to think about those things. Is your physical health something you think about?
Yeah, definitely.
Or you're about to say, no, I don't. It's
really
erotic.
No, I do. Because you get, again, as you get older, you notice that, your recovery, even like walking upstairs. I was thinking when I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I'd fly up these stairs, and now I'm like,
yeah, what is that?
I know. Or you're fine until someone asks you to speak. And it's really humiliating, because thinking, it's just speaking, but I can't do it. You just become aware of these stupid sort of, I don't know, banal experiences that have changed slightly, and obviously put on weight, and I have. Obviously, you're looking like a 20-year-old athlete, but I'm not.
You are.
Well, a very unfit one.
This took a turn.
In terms of physical health, I'm aware that my resilience is deteriorating, and again, I'm okay with that, because I'm getting older, and again, like injury, it takes longer to bounce back. When I'm doing things like stupid stuff like gardening, I'm like, wow, that hurts, Or in fact, I was chopping out a tree stump with an axe recently, and I've now got a good case of lateral epicondylitis, golfer's elbow. But and it's I can't get rid of it. I know why I've got it, and it's just something. It's like not a problem. It's just annoying. But 20 years ago that wouldn't have happened, and so you just have to be aware as you get older that your physical health. Is deteriorating. There's nothing you can do about it. You can manage it. It's like managed decline, I was thinking, really.
Just to clarify, there's lots you can do about your physical health.
Well,
I know what you mean now. Actually, what that was, I logged a thing, and then it drifted out of my brain, and then I thought, do you think as men we're good? I've been thinking about this. I've got a text. I've got I'm nearly 50 in about 18 months or so. and they teased me with a little text of not yet, but in 18 months you can get a free prostate blood check. I think it is.
You should get one at 40. Have you not had that yet? Have you not had your prostate?
40 was really?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I went to the doctors very close to my 40th birth, but in fact, it may have been afterwards, and they insisted on a digital rectal examination. You know, maybe.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's going to go to a dark place if we start talking about that, but I wasn't prepared for that.
I think that's my point. Is that that I don't know if it's a very good parallel to make, or if I'm right. But like with female sort of landmark investigations or whatever you would call them, I just think they're better at doing them. I don't know if maybe that's wrong. Maybe I need to speak to someone who's sort of like a similar age and say, actually, no, you're totally wrong. But I was thinking about this. So this text, I thought, hold on, why have I got to wait till I'm 50? Well, it turns out perhaps I don't.
It's changed, yeah.
And then I thought, how much we're talking about our sexy injuries, yeah, our kind of like surfing injury, gardening, very sexy,
yeah, well,
kind of musculoskeletal stuff.
Yeah.
And
I have just talked about digital rectal examination. That's
yeah, but that, I don't know, is that because we're two nurses?
Yeah,
and
probably.
Is that something that we would routinely talk about in a way that I noticed some of my female colleagues and friends talking about very articulately and very fluidly as well? Maybe I'm slightly wrong on that. Maybe I just need whoever's watching this thinking that's not true to come and talk to me about that. But anyway, if I ignore that for the moment, I think like blokes generally, I don't think we're good definitely about prostate stuff.
Yeah.
And you think of the sort of incidence and likelihood of that stuff, and we don't talk about it because obviously the area that probably you'll have the investigation, and probably because most of the symptoms are in the pants region.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that a lot recently. So there we go.
Okay, I think just leave it there, Jason. No.
And on that one, now we've got 7 minutes. We've got 7 minutes to talk about our prostates.
All right.
But yeah, I suppose we should be able to talk about this stuff really, really easily, being nurses and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we do.
I think that, again, as nurses, as healthcare professionals, we probably do. I would say that I'm quite comfortable talking about it with colleagues. I mean, often in a sort of jokey, facetious way, but even so, quite happy to kind of, discuss it. But I think if you're not, if you don't have that background or mentality, then no, I certainly think, men are very bad at talking about that. So I think, funnily enough though, if they learn that you are a healthcare professional, it tends to give them permission to talk about it. And I've sort of been at home, I'm sure maybe someone's come to, do some work, an electrician or something, and they find out what you do, and then they start telling you their past medical history, and which is fine, but it's funny how that sort of opens that door at times. But on the whole, no, it's not the sort of first conversation point I'd go to. But
no, I do have that. My running club, they'll say you're a doctor. I'm like, no, I'm not a doctor. It's not that. And you have to have that whole conversation, and then it's kind of a bit of a paradox because I'm a nurse, but I'm a mental health nurse. But I do kind of, and then we just end up having a chat about those types of things, where by the end of it, we both agree that we'll probably put off whatever we were talking about for another few weeks.
Yeah.
And I suppose maybe it's just my perception. Maybe it's changed slightly in terms of how much men talk about this stuff. Maybe it's more me, I don't think so. But yeah, there's something I noticed sort of recently, and I've sort of noticed it is changing in sort of national conversations about how much there is surrounding men's health and getting access to these things that you should really be getting looked at, especially if you're worried about them.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we should be talking about men's health, and I think there is definitely been an improvement in exposure and transparency and advertising around that. What the take up is, I don't know. I'm not involved in public health. That's not my thing. But I think, as with everything, you will get a section of the population who take those opportunities, and a section who will just ignore. And often for quite legitimate reasons that, if they don't think about it, it doesn't exist. And I'm guilty of that in some ways. I'm sure we all.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. Yeah.
like my wrist, for example. So I can't judge. But it's
Your
perfectly
wife reaching through the
I know,
screen.
yeah.
The wrist.
Yeah, exactly, and there's so much worse as well that we just fortunately don't have time to go into during this podcast. But I think men are probably need a little bit more encouragement, and certainly, women. I don't know why that is. Why though? Yeah, it's odd. I don't know. I haven't got the answer there.
For me, it's sort of time. So I don't know that it's necessary. But again, maybe we're an atypical sort of sample.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know. Like, there's sort of like whenever I've had an investigation, it's always taken me about 9 months to a year to get to the point where I think, and then there's always something where I sort of like I'm phoning up that. I'll put it off until I'll do that tomorrow. I'm free tomorrow, so I'll do it tomorrow. And I keep sort of like just bumping it until the next day. So it feels like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
I'm kind of not. All I'm doing is delaying it by an extra day.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. So, go on.
I was going to say, I don't know about you, but I hate going to the doctors. I mean, you sort of think that, as a healthcare professional, you'd be comfortable there, but I still dislike it very much.
And you used to enjoy it so much.
Well, that's right. Yeah. No, I don't know why, but so I mean, even sort of knowing what I know. Although I do think part of it is that you sort of feel obliged to explain it in sort of medical terms, and then it all becomes a bit embarrassing. But
I do sometimes. I sort of pitch up and I'm like, I kind of think I've worked out what's going on, or at least what could be, and I think I can give you a really good sort of overview of that, but I also don't want to sound like an arse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and so, and then you sit there being pretend that you don't know anything. Yeah. You're like, oh no, I'm not that sort of doctor. I don't know anything. And you're thinking, but I kind of do, and Google's helped as well.
Yeah.
But
And as soon as you drop what for us is quite a sort of normal sort of word, but it's health terminology. They just go, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then it was, okay, I've got to fess up.
Yeah, they always ask me, they always start the conversation by, what type of doctor are you? Yeah. And I'm like, not real one. Let's not have that discussion. Yeah. So before we started this, I rather unfairly, I don't think I've given you a heads up on, and maybe we won't be able to get there, but like, we've sort of bounced around, and we know David very well now.
I know. Sorry, I wasn't expecting it to be quite so autobiographical. There we go.
It's deep.
Yeah. Well, and confessional and therapeutic as well. I'm feeling better. I've got a whole weight off my shoulders.
Have you? Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's what it should be. I think people should talk more like this. What I've actually found out is that I was hoping I'd get closer to noticing common themes. So maybe I haven't done enough of these yet, that would keep coming up for how people describe health. And I thought maybe just to kind of keep it sort of, that it's got some sort of, was to help me keep track of how people define their health, is I've been asking people to think of 3 words that they feel describe their health. And I'm putting you in a slightly unfair position of having not really given you a heads up on that. So maybe even if we get 1 or 2 of those, that would be great. But is there anything that's sort of like, in terms of how you view this nebulous concept of health, is there anything that sort of springs to mind?
Jason told me about the questions right as we were about to start, and my mind is still pretty blank on 3 words that describe my health. Probably
you can't say the 3 words that we joked about. Even
No.
That's definitely.
Although I think complacency is probably coming into my mind now. I think health is super difficult to define. My background is definitely kind of the medical model, so that's where I'm situated. And I'm a sort of great sort of believer in homeostasis and cause and effect, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, as we know. And I think the older I've got, the more I've become aware. I said I definitely was dumb as a child and a late starter, so I'm sure many people got to this point way before I did. But looking at the sort of the interplay between social, mental health, physical, and it is very difficult to articulate what health is and you know what is good health and what is bad health, and you know, and I think again it's relative. What was good health when I was 20 looked very different to what I'm happy with good health being, you know, over 50. So and I'm sure that would change again. So it's a dynamic sort of process, but you've kind of, you know, got to be happy with it yourself. So again, I might think that I'm in good health, but someone else may go, well, actually, you know, for what? You're not. So it is quite reflexive, and it is quite sort of, as I said, relative to what point of your life you're in, and you know what's going on. And again, I also think if I was suffering from, I mean, let's, you know, take a chronic disease, I might be happy with my health at that point because, you know, again, relative to how bad I had been, I'm feeling better. But right now, I'd consider that ill health. So I'm not articulating this very well. I think you can be very glib, and you know, you can read a definition online. I don't know what it says. I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure it will say, you know, I don't know, an interplay.
The World Health Organization waffles on about it. Basically mentions every single little sort of like variable in a list, biopsychosocial, economic, and you know the usual list we've seen. I'm not really seeing a huge amount of that list on people's descriptions. They're coming up with all sorts of things I'd never really thought of. I must look at it. But I mean, again, I imagine that my sort of perspective of health is going to be very different to someone living in a different part of the world. I saw it, I haven't watched it, but there was a show on Netflix called something like Green Zones or Blue Zones or something about super healthy areas of the world where people lived to like 100 and were able to carry out and, you know, undertake gymnastics or whatever aged 100 or do a million press ups and stuff that I can't do. I really want to interview
you. Well, but again, I think they're all quite wealthy areas. Again, so how, you know, is that? It's supposed to be aspirational somehow, but I don't know. I don't know. So
no, I think what you're saying, or what I'm hearing, is that it depends on your sort of. You know, I'm being a scientist here. It depends on your outcome measurement, and people have got different outcome measurements at different points in their life and under different circumstances, and almost that's so temporal and can change like incrementally throughout the day that it's this, you know, I need to stop this podcast because it's a pointless question. It's finite, it's not finite, you know, it's infinite in terms of how it variables.
That's much more articulate than my rambling. I mean,
but we can't sum that up in 3 words.
No, so. I mean, I just use. I've go off a tangent. My thumb is a good example. I broke my wrist and I've knackered up my thumb as well, and I've no longer got abduction in this thumb. I can't do it. When that first happened, I was like, oh man, this is awful, and it really bothered me. Now, couldn't care less. So from a sort of health point of view, living, it's really nothing. But you know, it's just an example of that. At one point in my life, however many years ago that was, 5-10 years ago when I broke my, I can't even remember. You know, that was significant to me, and it bothered me that I couldn't do sort of stuff. But now, who cares? And so, from a health point of view, it's fine. So I think that relativity is sort of all, as you say, it's always changing, it's always dynamic. Sorry, I got off on a tangent again. What was
It's really interesting because it's sort of getting to the essence of, we could boil it down into 3 words, and maybe you need to go away and think about it because like...
Yes, teacher. Yes, sir.
Your homework is.
Okay, yeah.
But this is more about, and I thought, but the reason for this whole year-long investigation is an indulgence for Jason, who realised a doctor in health sciences, and I thought, what is health? Because I was like, no one asked me, no one cares, but I care. In that, no, actually, someone did ask me, and they said, well, what is that? And I thought, well, what is health? And
so it's their fault that we're here.
Absolutely. This unnamed person.
Yeah, thanks for that.
It's a random conversation on a dating site.
It wasn't going well then at that point?
Well, I thought I'd look really cool if I put kind of like this title in there, but actually it just made me look like a dumbass because I couldn't just actually answer the question, what is a doctor in health sciences? I don't know, but it's your job. I still don't know what. So like, but it is interesting. And I'm a bit worried that I'm going to get to the end of the year And my
Let's
answer
do that
to
now.
this is, you know when Jerry Springer used to get to the end of the show and he used to do this kind of like, he'd review the show and he'd do this
Okay,
kind of,
yeah.
I've got this vision of me doing this and having something really intelligent to say,
Yeah,
but I think what I'm going to do is this massive, what is health?
yeah.
You know, and
Well, certainly speaking to me hasn't thrown any light on the subject. I'm pretty sure.
it has. You got very, you're very, I can see your doctorate sort of like coming out, and that you've got this wonderful way of explaining your thought processes that has helped me to sort of get a bit further in my sort of thoughts about it. But you will have to think of 3 words. Even you can have. You can, I'll give you like, I don't publish this for like at least 5 or 6 minutes. So wonderful. So that's been fantastic.
Yeah.
We just pause and think: have we kept our job? I think we've kept our
Yeah,
job.
yeah. I think we've done okay.
I
I've
think so.
done a bit of self-editing. I've almost
Yeah,
swore,
same
said it you, but we
Yeah,
didn't. So that's
rubbish.
good. I mean, not that we do swear. It would be an aberration, wouldn't it?
Ah, no, I swear like a trooper.
Oh, okay.
But I do actually. My 2 worlds haven't merged that
much.
much.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't work for everyone.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 55 minutes. That's a record as well.
What is finished or
So
long or
it's
short?
usually about 48 minutes. So
Oh.
I thought there was a thing emerging there.
But
but
it didn't happen.
Now we've broken that, and so we'll see. When this only gets 1 view, because people see
Yeah.
like it's 55 minutes, I think that's a bit long.
Or they've met me and think, no. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thanks for spending time talking with me. It's been really interesting.
My pleasure.
And now when I press stop,
Yeah.
the freeze frame is the thing that goes on the internet. So like try and look like you.
So if I do this, no.